Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another movie review. And this time we're going to talk about something that I recently just saw and wanted to get my thoughts out on it. And it is Ransom. Released in 1956, directed by Alex Siegel and starring Glenn Ford, Donna Reed, and Leslie Nielsen in his first film role. The story goes a wealthy family living a perfect life has their worlds turned upside down when their son is kidnapped. The call comes through with a ransom number. The ransom is brought in, but the question is then asked between Glenn Ford, Leslie Nielsen, and the chief of police, I believe, of the statistics of when you pay the ransom, um, is there a guarantee that his son will come back alive? When the statistics come in, he ultimately makes the decision to not pay the ransom and instead makes it a reward on the kidnapper's head. Okay, so I have thoughts on this film. First off, it is a very well-made film. It is a great thriller, I would say maybe psychological thriller a little bit. Um, I think it would have been cool to see Hitchcock direct it. That would have been fun. But I think everyone did an amazing job. The acting is phenomenal. Glenn Ford and Donna Reed sell it as the couple who are extremely in love, but then when their worlds are rocked upside down, they have to cling to each other. But both their acting is amazing. A particular favorite of mine from Donna Reed especially was when Glenn Ford gives her the news. She becomes slightly hysterical, but then he calms her down. He's like, "Look, have I ever lied to you? Have I ever not handled a situation? Trust me." And she calms down. But when she sits down on the chair and he goes to call the police, she's she's there shaking. And the camera is showing both of them. But what is interesting is as Glenn's talking, she starts to shake more and more. And finally, she holds her hands up to her face and she becomes hysterical. And Glenn just embraces her. And that is amazing. I think she acted that scene really, really well. I think Glenn acted amazingly. It's really powerful acting. Leslie Nielsen also comes in as the newspaper man who's only interested in the story, but then turns out to be a man with a heart of gold, and I absolutely loved him. I loved him in Forbidden Planet, which was a sci-fi film. I think he did the next year. And then I absolutely loved him in Tammy and the Bachelor, co-starring my sweet and adorable Debbie Reynolds, one of my favorite actresses. And he does an amazing job in this movie. I loved him. I think he did a great job. I love the fact that when we see him, all he wants is the story, but then the more he grows to know the parents, he wants the boy back safely, and he's there to try and help. And I think they handled him very nicely. I especially love, well, I can't get into that because of spoilers, but when I talk about that in the end, I will hopefully remember his portion of that. So, the film definitely raises that question of, is paying the ransom worth it? Because if your child or whoever has been taken still alive, okay, but if not, then is paying the ransom worth it? Because you don't know anything. And the thing is, this was somewhat, I guess, loosely based on something that actually happened. A wealthy couple um, actually had several kids, but their 6-year-old boy was kidnapped. They did pay the ransom, but unfortunately, their son was killed. And that again brings up the portion in the film where it's like, okay, is paying the ransom worth it? There is a logical reason why you should pay the ransom. And I think the movie plays that very well. I also like the fact that Glenn wants the statistics first before he makes the final decision. But when he does, the town basically turns against him. They judge him for not paying the ransom. And they're like, well, if it was my kid, I would have paid the ransom. Okay, fine. But you don't know their situation and you shouldn't be judging them solely on that. And what's also heartbreaking too was Donna Reed's character basically becomes comatose during this part of the film because of that decision. A decision that I feel was kind of wrong for her because she's amazing in this film, but I don't think they used her to her full potential. I think you still could have had her as a hysterical, caring mother, but she could have reeled back a little bit and was like, you know what? I'm going to support my husband. I'm looking for the safety of my child. And we're just going to let this play out. But she is there with him. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. They basically take her out of the film. She leaves to go with the brother-in-law, but then she reappears at the end of the film. So to me, they kind of wasted her in this film. But what we get from her is amazing. Like I said, Glenn Ford is definitely really, really good in this film. I have seen him in several films. Probably one of my favorite being Gilda, but I've also loved him in Superman, where he plays the adoptive father of Clark. But he's phenomenal in this movie. He acts really, really well in this movie, especially when he is crying, and he doesn't even burst out crying. It's more subdued. And he just plays that so, so well. One of my other favorite characters is their butler. He is so awesome in this movie, and he actually quotes scripture a couple of times, and it's powerful stuff, especially coming from a born again Christian. Stan, it's definitely one of my favorites. Um, so I do want to get into spoilers. This is going to be a spoiler part of the territory because I want to talk about the ending of the film and what I thought of it. Okay, so spoiler alert now. And if you don't want to see the spoilers, click in onto this number right here. So after the broadcast, which I believe it's not even 24 hours, but it's over 10, so I think it's like 14, they hear nothing. But then a police officer, I believe, comes in with a whole bunch of reporters holding a shirt that the boy was wearing that day, and there's blood on it. And they basically just think that the boy is dead. So Glenn makes choices dealing with the company. So I don't know if he's just going to quit the company, if he's going to lose the company. I'm not sure what's going on there. The wife leaves him to go with the brother-in-law for a while, and he's left alone. Everybody leaves. He's alone in a dark house. And except for the butler. The butler remains with him the entire time, which is really sweet. After he collapses on the steps and he cries and the butler is holding him, which I believe you can watch on YouTube. It's really, really good. After that scene, we see him outside and he's walking towards this little shack kind of thing that his boy was trying to make earlier in the day. And, not earlier in the day, before the kidnapping. And he sits there and he puts his hand on his face and he starts crying again. And then we hear the faint words of Daddy. We hear it a couple of times, and then finally we see the boy. Here's my thing. I love it that we see the boy alive, but where did he come from? How did he escape? Now, there's an earlier scene before he goes to school when they're talking about him building. He took slabs out of the beds from the box springs. And Glenn Ford asks him, hey, how are you able to lift them bed springs? And the boy goes, well, I didn't lift them. He goes, I just more or less crawled in and got them. So my guess is because the boy is small, he was able to crawl through or do something that helped him to escape. There was also multiple times where we see the kidnapper, but it's from the back, so we don't see his face, but we see him twice. But the second time we see him, he's kind of still. So I don't know if he could have been dead at that point. But that's where I took from it. But again, there's no clarification. So we don't get a resolution of how the boy left and where the kidnapper is. And I kind of wish we would have gotten at least some guy saying, hey, we found the kidnapper, everything's good. But we don't even get that. All we get is, Glenn Ford, the boy comes to him, they embrace, and he goes, your mother needs you. And they go. And they round the corner, and Donna Reed's running from the street. Okay, how did she know about this? Because I don't think Glenn Ford had time to call his wife and be like, look, our son's alive, you better come down. I think he was basically going to just walk up. So how did she find out? To me, that just makes no sense. There's no clarification on what happened, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know. I just found that to be too rushed. I feel like we could have had a better ending. But I will say, I love when the boy is found, Leslie Nielsen and a bunch of cops, and I think there's a couple reporters. I'm not sure about the reporters, but they see them. And when people start running, Nielsen's like, no, let them go. Just let him alone. And then he kind of just, puts his head on his hands on the car, and he's just kind of looking, and it's just such a sweet moment. I really loved Leslie Nielsen in this role. And I find it funny that later in his career, he would do more comedies. I did also find out that they remade this movie in the mid-90s with Mel Gibson and Gary Sinise. Honestly, I would have loved to see Leslie Nielsen do like a bit part in this role, maybe do like a cop or something. I think that would have been really cool. But from what I understand, the remake is fine, so I'm not even going to waste my time watching the remake. If you're a fan of the remake, that's fine. I'm not chastising you for it or anything. I just personally don't think I would enjoy it. So anyway, that basically ends my take on Ransom. I don't think this movie is talked about enough, and I definitely think that you guys should give it a watch. The performances are good. The story is pretty well made and pretty well done. And it's definitely a really interesting film. So that about wraps up my review. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if you have seen Ransom and what your thoughts on it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Have a great and wonderful day.